Hello, everyone. My name is Judy, and I'm the Director of Outreach of HYPIA. Today, I have a very, very special guest, Patrick Lencastre. Hi, Patrick.
Hello. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being with us. And today, I will ask you questions about your language learning tips, and how you got into languages, and what languages mean to you. So, I'm very excited for today. So, Patrick, can you introduce yourself, please?
Right. Okay. That's going to be a little bit different, right? Because normally I try to do that in Korean, but then I guess English is okay for today. So I'm Patrick. I'm Brazilian. And what else should I say? Let's see. Since I was a kid, my mom had a project that I should speak English, Portuguese, and Spanish. So I was raised in these three languages. And then, as you can see, language learning is a part of my life since ever. And nowadays, I run my online language school, and I'm also a translator and what else? Writer, speaker, and so on and so on. So when I'm not sleeping, I'm learning or teaching languages, in short.
Okay, so your mom had a project to teach you three languages: Portuguese, your native language, Spanish, and English. How did you do that? Did you go to English school when you were little, or?
Yeah, that's a funny story. My mom is monolingual, but then she had a project of like the opportunity that I've lost, so my son will not lose. But then, luckily, we then ended up living side by side with a former diplomat. So he was
Oh.
an old guy, no family, so lonely old guy, very nice senior. And then he started teaching English as a hobby. But
Mhm.
then I was a kid, simply loved that guy. And then
Oh.
he talked to my mom, like, the kid's good. So if you let him spend more time with me, and then I used to go to the house of this guy every single day. And then he taught me like English and Spanish. And I remember being fascinated because I remember I was a very young kid. And I remember listening to him speaking on the phone with some Canadian friends. And I was a kid, I was fascinated by that. Like this
Oh.
old guy speaking English on the phone. I was like, come on, this is a superhero. Um, and so my language background started here with this guy.
How old were you?
I started English at the age of 4.
Oh.
Started Spanish at the age of 7.
Hmm. And you continued learning both languages in elementary school, middle school, and high school?
Yes. So that's maybe a sad part of the story. I remember when this guy passed away, I was 10, I guess. And during that time, I stopped speaking foreign languages. I didn't
Mhm.
want to, I couldn't do that. So my mom tried like courses and everything. Only after going to psychologist, and the psychologist says like it's because of this, it's a kind of trauma and so on,
Oh.
so on. After some treatment, I started speaking again. Because of this, I was as a kid suffering because this guy passed away. Um,
Oh.
After that, I went to regular courses. I finished regular courses in Brazil. I went to the university to study Spanish and Portuguese.
Mhm.
Um, and I've never stopped studying and doing like language exams and everything. I'm also a translator, but yeah, we can go step by step with this story. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what would start long.
Wow, that's so interesting. And when you were learning languages at like in high school, for example, were you interested?
Very lazy, very lazy. But then, um, what I remember that kept me motivated again was Dracula, the book, because I remember reading the book and my mom told me like, this is not the original, right? And I was like, what do you mean? Like that's a translation. You don't have access to the original text. And I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, yeah, the original text is going to be in English. You speak it. Maybe you should try. And then that kept me motivated again. So my mom was very wise to give me this tips and manipulate me a little bit through my laziness there. Like I remember reading comic books, but in English. My mom allowed me to read everything that I want, but in English or Spanish. You know, like, oh, you want comic books? Okay, I'm gonna buy it for you. English or Spanish? English or Spanish? But in high school, I was not so motivated. I did just the necessary.
Mm, okay. But you kept reading on your own.
True. Yeah, I
Oh,
still did.
okay. And was Spanish easy for you since you're a Portuguese native speaker? Native Portuguese speaker?
Yeah, like I don't really remember how difficult it was because, I was very young. So for me, it looks like it has always been here. Like Spanish is normal for me. I don't think about it. I remember learning the other languages that I learned as an adult, so
Mm,
that I can remember better. Like that was difficult, that was easy, and so on and so on. But this initial stage, I don't really remember how difficult it was.
okay. And then you went to university, and was there a reason why you chose your major in Portuguese and Spanish?
True. Well, that's a good question because my first I graduated in management. After that, I started an online school, and then I thought like, okay, I speak several languages, but I don't have academic background. That's bad.
Mm,
So I went back to the university, and my second
oh,
graduation, like Spanish Portuguese.
yeah. Did you enjoy your management degree studies?
Definitely, definitely. Like I love business, this business stuff, like financial, and that's very interesting for me as well. I like to
Mm,
merge like languages and business.
okay. Yeah. And then, did your degree, did it have some translation element to it, or did you learn to translate in university, or?
That's another part of the story. Actually, I have been friends with a guy called Zach. Zach is the original founder of HelloTalk, the app. And then since HelloTalk was a very small app, we have been friends. And then one day he told me, like, so Patrick, the app is getting bigger, so I need someone to translate for me and create like the interface and the courses of HelloTalk, but then in Portuguese. And I wanted to do that. And then I told him, like, Zach, I'm not a translator. Like, I'm a businessman, I'm a teacher, but not a translator. And then he told me, like, okay, I have translators on my team. We are going to train you, and then I want you to translate that for me. So that was a gift from Zach. So
Mm,
he turned me into a translator.
wow. So you started working as a translator right after your degree or during your studies?
Yes, yes, right after the degree.
Oh, okay. And then you moved to different countries after that, right?
Yes, that's a okay. There's one thinking about languages as a part of the story that I'm skipping. So when I was 18, I used to work with events like Olympic Games and conferences, and I used a lot of English and Spanish. And one day, my boss gently talking to me like, Patrick, I strongly advise you to learn French. And then I understood like if I want to keep this job, I need to learn French. So that was my first language as an adult.
Mm,
Um, and then after that, I stopped working with events and I started working in financial market. And it was very stressing. Like I was near to a burnout, and I thought I
mm,
needed a kind of different hobby to
yeah.
relieve the pressure. So I
Mm,
thought, you know what? I'm gonna learn a language that I really enjoy. Let's see. And then I thought about German. That was the first language that I thought about learning it because I wanted to, not because someone told me to. Um, and then in the middle of that, I met Zach and I went to Hello Talk. And then I moved to Portugal with my wife, and there I worked in a German company.
mm,
So there was a challenging period because I needed to use German like all day long.
mm,
Um, and I was the only Brazilian there,
Mm,
so they all speak only German. So
mm,
it was really satisfying for me.
mm. So did you learn, so you learned German before going to Portugal, and what was your level in German?
Well, I started learning with a private teacher, and then I would say that I had like almost a B1 when I went to
Mm,
Portugal. So they were all very nice and patient with me during
yeah.
the routine in the office. I remember that I used it to carry I used to carry a piece of paper with me to take notes about what is that? What is this?
Mm,
How do I say that? So, but it was a very good challenge because after
mm,
that I felt like okay, I speak German. That's it. I got the language because if I can survive this,
mm,
um, so. I spent
mm,
1 year there working in this company with those people. So German has a very special place for me in my heart.
mm. It's interesting how you went to Portugal and then learned German. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
did you want to move abroad? Did you want to experience a different country, and that's the reason why you went to Portugal?
yeah, actually I got married at the age of 20, so since ever. And then we had a appointment with the doctor, and the doctor told us like, so your wife will never be able to have kids. And then we saw like, okay, if we cannot have kids, so let's travel and live abroad and experience different
Oh,
countries. But then things changed as it's I don't know how to explain what happened, but then so we had our first daughter, and then we decided to get back to Brazil. But
oh,
regional plan was like, okay, we have no kids, we cannot have kids, we will never have kids, so let's just travel.
wow, I didn't know that. And you have four kids now.
I have 4 kids now.
Wow, wow. So after Portugal, you came back to Brazil?
Yeah, I spent before Portugal, I spent brief time in London
Hmm.
also for business opportunity. The only thing I regret about London is that I don't speak with the British accent. That's
Yeah.
quite funny, but I didn't absorb it. And after Portugal, I got back to Brazil. And since then, I'm not much a traveler because I'm 100% focused on raising my pack. Let's say.
Yeah. And Portugal is a Portuguese speaking country. And did you think that there were more similarities between Portugal and Brazil, or were you shocked by anything? Were there a lot of cultural shock?
Yeah, there's some cultural shock there. Yeah, we have sometimes we have a complicated relationship between Brazilians and Portuguese people in the country. So maybe that's why I got so involved in the German community there.
Oh, I see.
They kind of adopted me, helped me with everything that I need, like all the bureaucracy and everything. Yeah. What else? There are a lot of other languages in the story. Um,
When you were in
since
Portugal?
yeah, also, I think you know the feeling, right? After you learn the first language, second language, third language, it's like an
Yeah.
addiction. You can never stop
Yeah,
that.
it is. So German gave you the confidence to start other languages?
Yes. After German, I thought like, okay, I did it. And then I thought, what if I try a language with a different alphabet? You know? Um, and then okay, that's gonna sound super stupid, but that was that was the true story. I was watching a TV show called Arrow. That's a superhero TV show, and then I was younger, but the main character there speaks Russian and like English and Russian as well. And I remember that when I watched this scene, I thought like that's pretty badass. And then I got interested in learning Russian. But I loved the language. So, and Russian is my turning point because after learning Russian for real, like nowadays I
Mhm.
work with this language, I remember how difficult it was. And then I
Oh,
I kind of remind myself like, come on, if I if I handle that, so I can learn any other language. So Russian is my turning point.
You started learning Russian in Portugal
No, before a little
before.
bit
Oh.
going to Portugal.
How did you learn Russian? Because it's a completely new language.
True. I had a very good and patient language partner. So she used it to talk to me like every sentence twice. So like Russian and then English, Russian and English, Russian and English. And I studied a lot. Like everything she told me, I followed. Like if she had told me like, okay, you need to write by hand, okay, write by hand. Oh, you need to study 3 hours a day. Okay, study 3 hours a day. I was very diligent. And then it worked. That was my first Slavic language. And I
Oh,
loved family, this Slavic languages, family. So
so you studied for 3 hours a day?
sometimes I'm obsessed about language learning. So, and that's why sometimes now I study a little bit less because of the
Yeah,
kids, they demand more. So,
yeah.
um, but without kids, that was not so complicated
Oh,
to do it.
how long did it take for you to speak fluent Russian?
Um, well, I remember recording a first interview in Russian after 8 months, but I wouldn't say that I was fluent. Like that was okay communication. Even though I still have the video, but I'm not so comfortable with that. So when people normally ask me, like tell them, yes, yes, I remember, but do you have the video? Like, no, no. Because I feel bad now when I look back. But then at the time, I think it was good. It's like 8 months, and I started speaking normally, not super fluent or something. But then, um, 8 months, I would say.
Okay, 8 months. Um, and then after Russian, you learned other Slavic languages like Macedonian?
Yes, yes, well remembered.
Yeah.
So after Russian, I decided I'm Christian, so I was thinking I speak a lot of languages, but I don't understand the original languages of the sacred books of my own religion.
Oh,
So I decided to study Hebrew and Greek.
wow.
Um, so, and after that, I learned, so I started learning like biblical Hebrew and Koine Greek, but in the middle of the way, I changed it because I like to talk to people. So I changed to modern Hebrew and modern Greek. After that was Chinese because of Zach. Like I felt really bad of going to the meetings with Hello Talk guys, and like they're all Chinese and it's their language, but they switch to English because of me.
Mm.
That bothers me. Like, come on, I like those guys. They're very nice to me, and I don't even try to speak Chinese. That's bad. So I started
Mm.
Chinese, and
Wow.
after that, in 2020. I decided to challenge myself by learning three languages at the same time. That was Polish, Ukrainian, and Belarusian. Um, so maybe that was the craziest challenge that I've ever tried, but it worked. I was highly motivated by that. I love Slavic languages. So that's why I put myself as a challenge to to deliver some presentations at Polyglot Gathering, like in Polish and Ukrainian, and I did it.
Mm.
So it was like that was fantastic for me. That was my story of Slavic languages. And then Macedonian came to the account because of one of our teachers. I think she's also a HYPIA member. She's called Andriana. She's from Macedonia,
Mm.
but she works with us in Master Academy. She's a French teacher. But then when I have some kind of relationship with someone, I always think like, okay, what is your native language? What if I
No.
learn that? And then
Yeah.
I learned from her specifically.
Yeah, because I feel like meeting a person through their native language is a different experience as opposed to just speaking English, right? So, yeah, when I talk to you in Portuguese, I feel like I get to know you better. It's a different feeling. And I think that's one of the motivations for me to learn different languages because I want to connect with people better and want to know them on a deeper level.
Yeah. I don't, it was a little bit shocking when you talked to me in Portuguese. The first moments, I was like, oh, wait, that's my language. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And then you also mentioned having language partners, and now we're Korean, Portuguese slash German language partners. And do you think it's important to have a language partner when you learn languages?
Well, I don't believe I have only one way to learn languages. So, but in my perspective, yes, I could never do that without language exchange partners. So an example of that is like my Spanish language partner is my own wife. So we use Spanish at home, and I see how important that is, for everything. But then every language that I learned, I had language partners. I
Mm.
think because I remember insisting with you, like, come on, let's do some language exchange. And then you told me like, no, now I have no time. And then I have like, what about 2 months later? And then you told like, okay, maybe. And then I wrote you again 2 months later, like, hello, let's try again.
Yeah.
Um, Without a language partner, I don't have the motivation to do that.
Oh.
So it's not necessary, it's mandatory for me, like to have a language partner. Without a language partner, I can't do that. I don't like it. Um, so that's why. That's I think you remember that the first time we talked, you asked him like, okay, what is your level? And then I told you like 0. But if you're gonna be a language partner, so I would study hard.
Yeah,
Um, so I was waiting. Like if I have a language partner, I have the motivation, I can study hard.
I
So
see. Is that because you enjoy speaking the language or the reason why you look for a language partner?
also, yeah, there are several reasons. Like first of all, um, the experience is very different when you talk to someone and when you study. Because sometimes you study and you think like, okay, my Korean is great. Okay, try talking to someone, and then you're gonna see like, okay, I struggle hard. Like, oh, I have a lot of problems. My pronunciation is terrible. You can do that pretty well with Chinese, like you study and you think like my Chinese is perfect. And then when you speak to someone, your tones are all wrong and they don't understand you. It's like, come on, what happened? That was so perfect. So and also, I think that languages are just tools. Connecting with people is the real goal. Sometimes we think like, okay, we are going to use people as tools to learn languages. I don't like that. I see the other way around. Like I use the language as a tool to connect with people, So
Mm,
um, that's why I think it's mandatory for me to have a language exchange partner, and also because of the schedule. Sometimes
yeah.
you tell me, Patrick, can we talk like 8 a.m.? I'm like, okay, perfect. If I know that I'm going to talk to you, I will be there free at 8 a.m. and I
Yeah.
practice. But if I do that by myself, like, okay, 8 a.m. on Friday, I'm going to study Korean. No, I have a lot of things to do, a lot of things
Yeah.
happen. And
Yeah.
then, this is very
I
helpful.
see. Keeping yourself accountable. Yeah. And yeah, why are you learning Korean? What got you interested?
Why am I learning Korean? Well, that's a that's a funny thing. Like the first thing that comes to my mind is like, why not? Like it's a great language. But and normally there are some languages that I think like they are interesting and I would like to learn them. And then I decide if I'm going to learn that, like whether to learn it or not, if I'm going to have a language partner or not. So um, when I talked to you the first time, I was not sure if I would for real, like to learn Korean. I
Wow.
thought it was really interesting, like because I have a book here someplace that's like speak Korean, something like that. A student
Yeah.
gave it to me and said, like, Patrick, you need to learn this language that's very beautiful and interesting. And then taught me about the story of the alphabet. That's a very logical alphabet that's created to make sense. That captivated me. So, and then I thought, like, come on, if I had a good language partner, I would definitely learn Korean. And
Mm.
mental challenge, you know, like Korean is really tough.
Yeah.
Um, so I like it. And then when you took, of course, I didn't say that at the first moment because that sounds crazy. When you approach someone and say like, "Hello, would you like to be my language partner?" Because if not, we will not learn the language.
Yeah.
This is
Mm,
bad, but that was reality. Like, I was
interesting.
waiting.
And how's your Korean learning going so far? How is
Challenging.
Korean for you?
Um, well, that's funny because it's challenging, of course. It's very different from everything I know, but on the other hand, I don't think I don't think so much about that because I remember a teacher that I had once that I think it was a Hebrew teacher
Mm.
that I used it to say like, oh, come on, Hebrew's so difficult. Hebrew's so difficult. And one day she told me, you know what? Every time you say Korean, Hebrew is so difficult, it gets harder. You know? So I stopped doing that. I don't keep thinking about it like, "Come on, Korea is so difficult. It's so complicated." So I just enjoy the process, you know. I enjoy the mistakes I make. It's like, no, here we go again. But I think that's the important thing. And then,
Mm.
well, it has been a great experience, especially, well, you know, there's another part. Now I don't have much time for language exchange anymore, as in the past, before the kids.
Mm.
I used to have sometimes like 20 language partners on a week, but
Oh,
now
wow.
I don't have all this time anymore. And then when I talk to you, for example, that's very useful because I can use like French, German,
Yeah.
Korean, English, Spanish, Portuguese. So like I can use a lot of
Mm.
languages in one call. That's pretty cool.
Oh, and you've learned other Asian languages, right?
But yeah, Chinese,
Mandarin and Japanese also?
yeah, I've learned a little bit of Japanese in 2015 and then I gave up. And
Mm.
now I have this goal to learn Japanese this year because I have a good friend that's her native language. And then I was thinking again, like, come on, that's a good friend of mine. And I don't speak her native language. Why
Oh,
not? And then,
oh,
you so I have the intention, but I want to work on my Korean a little bit before.
okay. And for Mandarin, you even took the HSK test, right?
I took the HSK 2. I do intend
Oh,
to take the HSK 3 and so on. But I had formal teachers for Mandarin
I
because
see.
I tried language exchange and it was not working so well. Um, because like I don't know, the experience was very different from everything. So it was not like learning Polish or Ukrainian that I knew what was going on. Like with Chinese, no. And then we have some language exchange partners that they are very consistent, like we are. Like every week, I know they will be there. Um, but there are some people that's like, oh, this week I can't, and the other week you can, and the other week you can't. So for a difficult language like Chinese, for me as a Brazilian, so it doesn't work so well. I need consistency,
Mm,
and so I had formal teachers. So that was my first Asian language.
I see. And so which languages are you actively practicing these days?
Well, I speak Portuguese, English, Spanish at home.
Yeah.
As a heritage from my mom. That's what I do with my own kids. Um, sometimes I speak the languages of my own school because I participate in the classes and everything. So we offer English, Spanish, French, Italian, and German. I work using Russian for interpreting. So
Hmm.
Russian is part of my language core, let's say. Um, I read a lot in original Christian languages, so I use a lot of Hebrew and Greek. Now well, I still have it here, like so I'm always dealing with like texts like that. Um, but I
Mm.
read more than I speak.
Hmm.
And I'm currently studying the language that I'm a beginner, like Korean and Arabic. Um, and I use Macedonian just because I like it. It's not, I don't work
Oh,
with it, but I like the language so much. But
oh,
I think it's normal and I will lie. Like we don't have, if you speak many languages, I think it's normal that you have ups and downs with the languages. You cannot maintain all of them at a high peak all the time, So so
mm. And so you said you talk to your kids in three languages, but do you mix the three or what's the rule?
yeah, so we have like moments for each language. So it's like breakfast time. So like that's a Spanish. Um, and then we have like lunchtime or playground time, and then it's like English. So I divide by
Wow, time.
situations.
Wow, that's very interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of that strategy because I've heard of OPAL, which is one parent, one language. Yeah, but dividing it into like different moments of the day, it's interesting. So they would associate a language with an activity, right? When you're playing in the playground, you speak English, and when you're eating, you speak Spanish.
Yes,
Cool. And
definitely.
how do they speak good Spanish or
Um,
English?
Yeah, of course they speak better Portuguese because we have all the rest of the family, so they speak Portuguese much more. But the funny thing is like they understand all these three languages, and sometimes they mix some stuff like food vocabulary. They only know that in Spanish, So it's common that they're using Portuguese and then they ask for some things in Spanish. And people from the family was like, "What is that? What are you talking about? What happened?" I was like, "No, yeah, because they create this relation between like breakfast time and Spanish, for example. But I don't put a lot of pressure on them, like because my first daughter is like 5 years old, so I think they're too young. If they
Yeah,
take the time, that's okay. I don't put pressure. It's like, come on, you need to be fluent. Let's go.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Okay. And what's your next language? Do you know yet?
Um, yeah, like I don't have any intention to add more languages since I'm dealing with Korean, Arabic, and soon I'm going to add Japanese. So I think that's enough for a large period of my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, do you keep learning languages because it gives you joy? So it gives you joy and then it helps you connect with people. And are there any other motivations?
Sure. Also, well, first of all, yes, I love it. Second, that helps me to connect with people. Also, it keeps me in the game. I think it's important as a teacher to be in the game, like because you lose the common touch if you don't do that. So you stop understanding your students because you look at them as like,
Oh,
how is it possible that this is difficult? Come on. Of course,
oh,
because I've been dealing with English for 30 years and then I will never feel the pain of a student who is at the beginning stage. So if I am at the beginning stage of something, like I know, yeah, I'm trying to speak Korean and I suffer because I do a lot of mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes with the sentences and everything. So I feel the pain, and then I think that helps me to connect better with my own students, and also that's good for business. Like
yeah.
language are also they're very.
Oh, that's so interesting how, as a teacher, you try to understand your students by learning new languages yourself. I find that very interesting and fresh as a fresh perspective. And your academy, so do you actually teach those languages or how does it work? Do you have teachers?
Yes, we have teachers. I teach Spanish and English, but normally I deal only with like exam preparation. And we have other teachers there. We have French teachers, Italian teachers, English teachers, and German as well. So yeah, we have a team there, and like I think that's the natural path for me to gradually abandon the classroom, unfortunately, like because I need to take care of the business part of the school.
Oh,
Um, so that's necessary. You need to have good people around you. I don't think it's
yeah.
possible to create a successful company by yourself alone, 100%. Because if you do that, your company will be limited by yourself. You know, like
Yeah.
the size of my company will be the size of my own schedule or the size of my own
Um,
skills. Um,
yes. You need to scale it. Yeah. So, out of all the, well, things you do, for example, teaching, translating, what do you like the most?
teaching. I love
Teaching?
teaching. Yeah.
Oh, oh.
Um, Also like interpreting is also very challenging because normally I do that from Russian to Portuguese.
Mm,
Um, and that's super cool for me because I
yeah.
remind myself the beginning of my journey with Russian.
Mm.
So it's um
Do you usually work with companies for like simultaneous interpreting?
yeah, companies or some business people that travel around. So um and Russian is a very interesting language for business. And especially in Brazil.
Mm, okay. And my last question is, what is your favorite language?
It's impossible to say. But normally that's Polish.
Polish.
Um,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, but it changes sometimes, like I think when you dive deep into a language that is momentaneously your favorite language, it's like, come on, that's but some days it's Polish, some days it's Russian, some days but most of the days I would say that's Polish. I think that the pronunciation of the words in Polish are fascinating. Like
Mm.
um so I love this language.
Oh. And one last word or advice for HYPIA members or people who want to learn different languages, people who are interested in languages.
Wow. Okay. Let me think. So I would say um especially okay, hyper members. So we speak a lot of languages. That's something I
Yeah.
remember was like it's not only about which languages you speak or you don't, but rather than what are you gonna do with the languages that you speak, because that can also be a trap. You learn one more language, and at the end, it's like you have a treasure, but you don't know how to use it. So you need to
Mm,
think, what am I going to do with the languages that I have? Like, um, I'm going to help people, or maybe, like work with refugees. That's noble, or I'm going to create business, I'm going to teach, so what are you going to do? Like you have good tools, but then what are you going to do with those tools? I would say that's important to think on this perspective as well. Like, what are you going to do with the tools that you have?
mhm. Okay. So, do you think it's important to use all the languages that you speak? Or some people might just learn it because they like it and they don't really care about using them.
Yeah, like I would say that's impossible to use all the languages that you speak. Like, if you speak more than seven languages, like eight languages, 10 languages, 20 languages, of course, some of them is going to be, they're going to disappear, they're going to vanish, and then you recover that. As I understand, we all have like our language core. That's my language core. That's the language that I use the most, and so it's variable, of course, but
Hmm.
I don't think it's possible to to be actively using all the languages that we speak. But the problem would be like if you don't use any of the languages that you speak, like so because you have a lot of good tools.
Mm,
So you need to use something there to do something. Yeah, you have a powerful tool in your hands. That's like
yes.
multilingualism. So use
And
it.
that can really enrich people's lives using those languages, the tools they have. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's it for our interview. Thank you so much for being on the show, the interview. And I will see you this Friday for our language exchange. And yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.